nice with that nice new intro. I love it there, Chadwick.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Pink Cloud. I am DJ Kelly Reverb. I am an RSPS. Yes, thank you very much, Chad. Thank you very much for being so grown up, Chad. Anyway, hey, we're a show that is on recovery. We're recovery-based, but multiple pathways. Also, we touch on a little mental health and what's wrong with Chad usually. But don't be scared. Don't be scared. we're gonna take you out on the open road. Don't be scared. Anyway, Chad Lamons, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only next to me. There we go. He always gives himself the good backing sounds, and I always get the fart in the gong.
Right.
Yeah, man. Hi, man.
Hey, bro.
Hey, it's good to see you today, man. Hey, brother. Hey, man. It's going to be a good day, man. We're feeling it, man.
I never have any idea which Chad is going to show up. Anyway, but excited to have these two young ladies in the house. They are with an organization that I've heard a lot about. Actually, a lot of friends of mine have stayed in an Oxford house. They're actually a organization that is, I would say, worldwide.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Correct. Well, without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. On my left, we have Miss Chelsea Collier.
Collier. Close.
I was trying to give it like a little French. Thank you, Chad. That was extremely long.
It was.
But, okay, so it's Collier. I was
Yes.
trying to be fancy with it. Collier. Collier.
Literally.
Literally. Anyway, Chelsea, thank you for coming out. And then sitting next to her is Erica Cotton, correct?
That's it.
Or is it Cotton?
You couldn't mess that one up, so you did well. You did well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming in. I know y'all both actually work for the organization called Oxford House. You are actually an outreach worker, and you
Correct.
are the senior outreach coordinator. Correct. That is a fancy title.
It is
I
a
like
fancy
it.
title.
I like it. But it's so funny because a lot of our guests have actually stayed at an Oxford house, and I love the organization because of what it does and the opportunity it gives people. But we'll get into that a little bit more. What we like to do is actually qualify, and tell our backstory a little bit here, so maybe somebody else will relate to it. So I guess we're going to start off with young Miss Chelsea over here.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having us, and I really appreciate it. Super excited, but also a little nervous. But I got this, right?
You got this.
I
You
got
got
this.
this, girl.
Everything is
We're just
fine.
talking. So my name is Chelsea. I am an addict, first and foremost. But yeah, I've been in recovery for almost 5 years now. In October, it'll be 5 years. So I'm super excited about that. I'm very grateful. But my story, it kind of started out with just, my home was a normal middle-class home, right? My mom and dad were together until I was about 14, and then they divorced. But nothing really crazy. I was a goody-goody back then. And then when I turned around 17, I started dabbling in the marijuana.
You started to take the pot.
Yes. I took the pot.
You took the pot.
I took
All
it.
the
I
pot.
did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I
Right.
did it all with the pot. And so that was it, right? Like I was a functioning pothead pretty much is what I considered myself until probably, I don't know, in my 40s. Actually, it was late 30s, 37, I think, to be exact. And I was successful, right, as a functioning pothead, as I would call myself, because I had my own car, my own house, all the things, right? I had a successful career, all the things. And then I met this guy. That's usually how the story starts, right? I met this guy.
His name was Chad.
I'm part of that story for a lot of people, unfortunately. And fortunately.
But not mine.
There you go.
But yeah, I met this guy, and so he said, hey, I'm going to do this, and is it okay if I do this in there? Because I don't want to do it in here. And I said, well, yeah, but what is it? And it was meth.
Okay.
And so as soon as he told me, I said, well, let me try it. Let me see what it does.
Make sure it's okay.
Yeah. And that was it, right? That was
Uh-huh.
all she wrote. Off to the races. From that day on, I was hooked. I thought, well, I'll only do this on the weekends. You know how that goes.
Right.
How successful that is. And so, yeah, that was it. And I actually, it was horrible from the very beginning. My first time doing it, I what they call overamped to the point where
Oh, yeah.
I was out of there, right? And I was actually starting a new job. And so I went to the job and I went to lunch and I was like, well, I'm going to smoke some weed and I'm going to smoke some meth and I got this, right? And that was at lunch.
Right.
I get back and I end up passing out at my desk, lose the job.
Oh,
it
wow.
was a
First
whole
day?
thing, right?
Nice.
Yeah, first day. What a great first
Yeah, right.
impression. So, yeah, and after that, you know, of course, in my meth addiction, it came with all the things, right? I was gambling all the time. I spent about a year in Oklahoma gambling, going to all kinds of casinos because I wanted those little Players Club cards, you know, and
Okay.
the free play. That was my thing.
Is that for free meth?
Unfortunately, that cost.
Right.
And, yeah. But you didn't have to eat, so that was a plus.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
But, yeah, and that led me to my first arrest. Was in Oklahoma, in Bryan County, in the good old city of Durant. And I was arrested for possession of methamphetamine, went to jail, got out, got 5 years of deferred adjudication, deferred probation. And then, of course, I come back home. I end up losing my house. It was foreclosed on. Of course, I don't have a job because all I'm doing is going to the casinos and all that stuff, right? And doing the most with
What was the
with my
what was the
DOC.
what was the GOC, the game of choice?
the game of choice.
Yeah.
Ooh, I would say either Lucky Duck
Okay.
or Crazy Cherry.
Oh, was that a slot machine
Yes,
then?
slot
Oh my
machines.
God. So you were
Hitting the
like,
buttons.
oh yeah. Were
She
you
knows the names.
dollar slots or what?
I love the dollars, $2, $3
Okay.
sometimes.
All right,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Okay.
That's where I would make the most bang for my buck.
Sure. Gotcha. Gotcha.
But yeah, and so I come back. I don't have a house, but I do have a car, so I'm living out of my car.
Okay.
And
You adapted.
I did.
Right.
I did. And so I was going everywhere. And of course, with that, because I don't have anywhere to go, then I start picking up more charges. I start getting arrested more. I ended up, at the end of it, I ended up having the felony possession in Oklahoma. I had a charge in Denton County. I had 2 charges in Dallas and 2 charges in Collin County.
Sounds eerily familiar to some guy I know named Chad, man.
So-
Who was your arresting officer? Hold on.
But yeah, and it was like a domino effect, right? Like once I started getting them, then boom, boom, boom.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just all came all of a sudden. And luckily for me, it was really, truly, I think, higher power stuff, right? My God. And it ended up being that I got probation for all of it. I never had to do prison time,
Okay.
thank God.
Right.
The last time I ended up in Dallas County on it was on violation of probation plus a new charge. I caught a new charge because I had some stuff on me. And I was in there for 9 months, and that was the longest time that I did incarcerated.
Okay.
But while I was in there, I was able to get into a specialty program pod called Resolana, which was amazing. It truly changed my life. We did classes every day. It was a trauma-based, 12-step-based program pod
Okay.
where we would work on, ourselves, right? And what got us here, what got us to this point. So it was in Kay's Tower. All those people.
South
out there.
Tower, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
South Tower. So
Shout out South Tower.
yeah,
Shout out, man.
shout out. But yeah, it really did change my life, and it taught me that being negative is not the way to be, right? Because I would always wake up and say "F my life," and then I learned what you put out is what you get back.
Right.
So that's really what started to change me. And then when I got out of jail, my judge told me, she said, "Look, if you don't go into sober living, then if she said you have to go into sober living. That was one of the conditions of reinstating my probation. She said, but if I see you back here, I'm going to give you the maximum sentence, and I'm not going to run them CC, which is concurrent. I'm going to stack them. So I would have gotten like 12 years of prison time or something like that. So I said, okay, well,
So,
I'm
yeah.
going to try it.
So you got
I
that
suppose.
going for you. Right.
So yeah, so I looked up sober living homes, and Oxford House came up.
Okay.
And I said, "What the heck is this?" And so I moved into an Oxford House.
It sounds fancy. It sounds
it
English,
does, right? And I was, and since I had just gotten out of jail, I didn't want to be told what to do anymore. I'm tired of that. I'm done with that. I feel like I could do this on my own. The only reason why I'm going here is because my judge tells me that I have to. So that's what I'm going to do. And so I moved into an Oxford House in October. It was actually October 28th of 2019 is when I moved into Oxford House. And I started, I was just there, right? But I started going to NA meetings because that, again, a requirement of my probation. So I started doing NA meetings, and I was just going there to get my paper signed, whatever. I was just there. But then I started listening. And I got a sponsor. And I started working the steps. And I started to become a family with the women inside the house that I was living in.
Right.
In Dallas.
Well, and I think that's an important part always, like, of a recovery and living in a sober living situation, is that built-in community.
Exactly. And that's what I needed.
I think that's really important, like when you first get out, especially.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I felt, because, in my addiction, I felt so alone, right? I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to live anymore. I felt disconnected, no trust from anybody. But then getting into sobriety, and I was already kind of into sobriety because I was in jail. But anyways,
for sobriety.
Right.
For not elective sobriety.
Thank
right?
you, good old Dallas County in the
Right.
state of Texas.
Shout out to them. Thank you so much for me too. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Chad had a little forced sobriety as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works. Right.
It
worked for me.
Jail works.
It does. Because I was 40
Yeah.
years old sitting in prison, or not prison, but
Yeah.
in jail with these 20-year-olds. And I'm thinking,
Sure.
what am I doing with my life?
Right.
Are you kidding me? What am I doing? And so again, I started working a program of Narcotics Anonymous. I started working with a sponsor. I did all the things with Oxford House that my sisters were telling me to do inside of the house. And I started stepping up to service positions within Oxford House. And that's really what allowed me to decide what I wanted to be for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Because now everything's changed, right? Like, I've been in corporate America. I've done that whole thing. Now I've got these 6 or 7 felonies on my record. Who's going to hire me, right?
Right.
And especially at that kind of a job with corporate America. That's hard. And I was in accounting, so that's even harder now to get an accounting job, right? So I started dabbling in the service work, and I became the reentry chair, and I was the vice chair of a chapter, and all these things, right? And that's really where I learned what I wanted to do. That's where I learned where my passion is. Reentry really taught me that that's what I want to do with the rest of my life, is to help others. And then I found, I saw this lady, and I saw her go into a house and helping people, and I was like, what is she doing? What is she? Who is she? And they said, oh, she's an outreach worker. She works for Oxford House. And I was like, what? You mean she's like going and helping people and getting paid for it? Are you kidding me? That's a thing? And so I said, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with my life. And so that was my goal. I did end up getting back into corporate America, which is crazy, right? So before I became an outreach worker and did all this, when I gotten out of jail, and I went ahead and I applied for an accounting position with a corporate America job. And when I went into the interview, I'll never forget this, and I always make sure that I tell people this because I think it's really important. When I went in there and I sat down, and the hiring manager sat down with me, and I said, look, I'm going to tell you straight up. I'm an addict, but I'm in recovery. If you do my background check, if you run my background, you're going to see several felonies. But just know that I'm doing it. I'm on probation. I'm working. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm doing all the things. And she gave me a high five.
Oh, cool.
When I told her.
Right.
And then after the interview, she gave me a hug.
Right.
And then within a couple hours, they had called and offered me the job.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Well, but that's what I also say, that you don't realize, man, there's a whole tribe out there. There's a whole secret society of people that had dealt with addiction and are sober or had a relative, and they're like, oh yeah, dude, it's like that secret society that no one knows about until it happens to you.
Yeah, that is so true. And nowadays, unfortunately, it is so prevalent across everywhere. Yeah. So, so I joined them. I started working accounting again and doing all the things. And then I got a call from Oxford House that a position had opened up for an outreach worker in Dallas. And so I applied and got the job. And, you know, when I was transitioning to get out of Oxford House, right? Because I had actually moved out. So I was in Oxford House for a couple of years, or about a year and a half. I was gonna say a couple of years. I was in Oxford House for about a year and a half. And
how long? Yeah, well, I guess we'll get to this, but how long can you stay at an Oxford House?
Indefinitely.
Okay.
As long as you want, as little as you want.
Yeah. All right.
So I was in there for a little while, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to move out because I had some personal things go on. My mom's husband had passed away, and so she was going to be in the house alone. So I had to go.
Sure.
You know, I wanted to move in with her to be with her so that she wasn't alone. I'm an only child.
Right.
So I really wanted to be there for her. And I thought to myself, when I'm living in the Oxford House, I thought, you know, what am I going to do, right? When I move out, what does that look like for me in my recovery? Because I'm still going to meetings, I'm still doing that, but Oxford House became such a big part of my life with the service work and always helping people. Like, what am I going to do outside of this? So I started Googling, and I started looking up different advocacy groups. And so I found there's like Statewide Leadership Council that I'm involved with now, which is statewide.
Okay.
And we work with like justice involved people and helping change laws and stuff.
Okay.
And then we got into the Recovery Advocacy Project with Mobilize Recovery. Like, there are several different groups that I just started joining because I was like, this is cool. You know, I could definitely do this because I want to advocate for those that, you know, get out of jail and they're on probation. It makes it so difficult when you get out on probation, as you know. You know, you have all these things that you have to pay, and then you've got to find somewhere to live. But before you can even have a job, you got to have a home address, and then you've got to have an ID, and you have to have social.
Oh yeah,
right.
Like, you have to have all these things, and I don't have any of these things. So I really wanted to try to help bring awareness, change the stigma behind addiction and recovery, and really help people that are incarcerated, maybe that haven't found their voice yet. You know, kind of be that person, be that voice for them until they can find their own.
Right, and just
people
to kind of maybe even let you know, instill some hope.
Exactly.
In the hopeless, you know, so to speak. I mean, because when you're incarcerated, I imagine that you would just think, oh my God, I need, you know, like the list you just went down. Oh, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. How is that going to be even possible? So
it seems completely insurmountable at the time.
It does.
And it's especially when you get out and it's like, oh, cool, well, I'll go get a job. And you got all these great ideas. And then, like, the second you start realizing, like, what all that takes, it's just, you turn that, and it's not a molehill you're turning into a mountain. It's like a smaller mountain that you're turning into a bigger mountain. But it's like one thing at a time, one day at a time kind of thing.
That's so true.
And it's like you almost have to have somebody help you through it, because it's like that's why the recidivism rate is so high with probation and stuff, because you just
used the fancy word, Chad.
Oh, hold on.
Recidivism.
Chad used the fancy word.
Say it in French.
Recidivism.
But
we
anyway.
like to have fun here. We have fun.
That's right.
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
But yeah, so that's great. So, and then you're currently working for Oxford House. But I guess we're going to get to, is she your superior there, or your?
Do we want to call her that? I don't know if we want to call her that.
We'll call her your senior outreach coordinator.
Yes,
right. That'll work. Yes, that will work.
But yeah, so thanks for coming in. I appreciate you making time, because I know you were on one of y'all was on vacation and just got back.
She's always on vacation.
Right.
I mean, no, I didn't say that. I didn't
Called
say that.
out. It is an honor to make time for this. So
Well,
thank
I
y'all
love
for
it.
having
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for coming on, and can't wait to hear your story.
Yeah, so my name is Erica. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since March 17th, 2017. That, however, was not my first rodeo. The first time I ever attended a 12-step meeting, I was 19 years old. I was fresh out of Tarrant County. You know, I knew that I definitely had a drug problem, and my grandmother actually found Narcotics Anonymous for me. And so I went to a meeting at 19, but for me, I was raised, me and my brother were raised by my single mother, and she was sick, and so I had to take care of my mom a lot. And so at the age of 13, I learned that I could drink and I could smoke weed and I could shut my mind down and I could escape. And by the time I was 15 years old, I had already ran away from home. I was, doing methamphetamines. And my mother and my brother moved here to Texas, and I followed them. I think I was almost 17 at the time. Obviously, I had dropped out of high school, and so, we had this plan. Like, I wanted to be a child psychologist. I had always wanted to be a child psychologist. So I'm going to go get my GED. I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to, I'm going to get my life back together. And so at 17 years old, I had already obtained my GED. I was going to school. The way we had it all mapped out, I could have my master's at 25. And, I had a game plan, but I was also an alcoholic. And so I started drinking again real heavily, and then I started working in a bar, and the bartender was selling meth. And so now I'm running the streets of Arlington smoking meth. And so I had a little bit of clean time. I had about 3 years clean through the 12-step program of Narcotics Anonymous, but I wasn't working a program. I could come in and I could look good and I could sound good and I could repeat the things that I was hearing in the meetings, and from the outside looking in, it looked like I had it going on.
Right.
But I didn't at all, And so the moment I stopped surrounding myself with those individuals that were in recovery and started hanging out with those individuals that could drink and maintain, it was over for me. And for me, I've had 3 years, a couple of years, I've had a couple of months, just in and out since I was 19. And for me, I'm always going to go out on a Miller Lite and good old country music, but then I'm eventually going to smoke some meth, right? And it might be 3 days later.
It's going to wind up there
exactly.
at some point.
Exactly. It could be 3 days later. It could be 3 months later, but I'm eventually going to get high. And so when I made it to treatment in 2017, in my mind, I couldn't go to AA because I'd done meth. Right. And so I can't go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I'm a drug addict. And so I didn't know the differences. Right. And so when I made it to treatment in 2017, they worked from the big book, and I just fell in love with the literature. And I had to recognize for me that I'm an alcoholic through and through. Like, anytime I ever relapsed, I didn't just pick up the pipe and start smoking meth, right? I always went out on the alcohol.
There was always a progression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so I absolutely fell in love with the literature in treatment with the AA program. And when I got out of treatment, I worked with an AA sponsor. But let's back it up just a little bit. So I was 24 when I had my son. My son's 13 now. And I can remember when I was in NA meetings, looking down on the parents that came in that had gotten their children taken away, and like, how could you?
Yeah.
My first son was stillborn, less than a month from his due date, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, I didn't think I could have kids, and so in my mind, like, a child would be my saving grace, then I would never have to worry about drinking or doing drugs again, because that child's going to keep me clean. And by the time my son was a year, I was already doing meth again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I got really, really bad. I was a stay-at-home mother, and my husband and I separated. My addiction really just got the best of me. And I can remember I moved in with my brother and my sister-in-law, and I was living in their in-law suite in Alvarado, and I got a good office job, and my son had come and he was living with me. And I remember, I think I was maybe 45 days sober. And I was like, you're doing so good. You deserve a beer Friday after work.
Oh, yeah. A little reward.
And like, in one weekend, that's how bad it was for me, right? Or that's how bad it is for all of us. In one weekend, I drank it all away. I got in a fight with my sister-in-law. She kicked me out of the house. So now me and my son are living in a hotel off of 35. I didn't tell my husband. And I always played these games with myself where if I knew I had to get up and do something the next day, I would only allow myself to buy a certain amount of alcohol, so that way I don't drink too much.
Okay.
So I can still go to sleep and I could wake up and I can maintain. And that was the plan that Sunday night. And it was always still reserved 211s, right? So I got my I got my two still reserved 211s. We go back to the hotel that we were staying at. It was like this, rent by the week or whatever. And I drank them like that. And
that moderation didn't work out for you?
Yeah, it did not work at all. But what was a moment of clarity for me, like they say in our literature, I took my 7-year-old son and I put him in the car, and I went down to the gas station to buy more, and I told myself, oh, you're just going to be on the service road. Everything's going to be fine. And we were laughing and dancing and having a good time, listening to the radio, driving back. And I remember we pull up to this red light, and there's just this smile on his face, and we're having a good time, and it it hit me like, what are you doing? Like, what are you really doing? You're drinking and you're driving with your child. That is not okay.
You're partying with your kid.
Yeah. And it was at that point that I no longer trusted myself with my son. And, you know, I called his dad and I told him what I was doing, and he came and picked him up. And for the next year, I was out of there. I was absolutely out of there. Thankfully, I
Well,
called.
at least you had like the wherewithal or the insight to admit it at that time. I mean, because that could have gotten really ugly.
It really could have. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for that moment of clarity when, you know, I could say, hey, you got to come get him because I don't even trust myself with him anymore. And so I knew I had to quit. You know, I was at this point in the beginning of 2017, I had DTs, so I had to drink. But then it just became this vicious cycle where I would get too drunk in the morning, and then I'd have to get high in the afternoon, and then I'd get too high, and then I'd drink again.
I can totally relate to that because all you're really trying to do is just get there.
Yeah, and it never ended.
The joke is, oh man, there it went. You know.
So I called the tribal center, and I'm like, look, I need to go to treatment. And so the plan was I was going to have one last hoorah. I was going to go to the bar. I was going to get drunk. It was going to be my last one because I knew it was over. And at that point, like, I wanted to stop. I just couldn't. And I can remember hoping that I would get pulled over and get a DWI so I could go to jail so I could stop then, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to on my own. And so I got too drunk that night at the bar, and I couldn't even pack my bag to go sit on the treatment steps the next morning. So I was like, okay, bet. I'm still going to drink because I have to, but tonight I'm going to also get high so I can still pack my bag and I can still go to treatment the next morning. And it worked, right? So 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting on the steps of Nexus, drinking my 211, waiting for the doors to open.
Shout out Nexus.
Shout out to Nexus.
Yeah,
Shout out to
love
Nexus. Unfortunately, they didn't have a bed available, but the tribal center was able to get me into the recovery center in Wichita Falls. And that's where it began for me. And I remember my therapist was telling me, he was like, you know, you've never learned how to stand on your own 2 feet. It's time for Erica to take care of Erica, because there had always been a man taking care of me, right? You know, I was a stay-at-home mother, and my husband was a great provider, but he always, you know, took care of us, or it was my dad, or it was always some man in my life that was taking care of me. And Erica never knew how to take care of herself. And so he was telling me, he was like, you know, I want you to look into this sober living place when you get out of treatment. And so I make it to treatment. I go through detox, 3 days of detox, make it to treatment, 28 days in treatment. And I can remember we were coming up on the end of it, and that fear started to set in. Like shit's about to get real.
Right.
I'm 2 hours away from, you know, me and my husband were separated at the time, but I'm 2 hours away from my family in the Metroplex. I have no money. I have no job. I stole snacks from the recovery center when I left because I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. And I was very tempted to see if I could get my time extended, but I didn't, you know. And so I moved into my first Oxford house on April 15th of 2017. I hit 3 meetings a day. I got plugged into the AA community out there. I was kind of bougie, right? I was like, I need to get this office job back. Like I need to get some type of good job, and nobody was going to hire me. And so I started car hopping at Sonic over by the air base. And for the first time in my life, I was taking care of myself. Now, I was smoking cheap cigarettes and eating top ramen every day, but I was doing the damn thing.
It's still super cool when you hit that level. You're like, holy shit.
Yes.
And I have money to go do this.
Yes.
And I'm not spending it on dope. I'm not this. I'm not that. That's pivotal when you finally hit that. That's
freedom.
super cool.
And so I can remember one time after moving into this Oxford house, there was my car had broken down. All the ladies had gone to a meeting. I was the only one at the house, and we lived real close to a gas station. And I had that thought. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to walk to the gas station. I'm going to get my 211. I'm going to drink it behind the gas station, throw it away, come back home. Nobody's ever going to know.
Right.
And it just clicked with me like, one, you're not even going to be able to drink one, and you know that. And then where are you going to end up? And so I called my sponsor, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about drinking. And she came and she picked me up. And I just knew she was going to let me, you know, tell her all about all of my problems and what's going on in my life. And no, I got to sit there and talk to her and her husband, who were both in recovery, and hear their stories and hear their journey. And when it was all said and done, I didn't want to drink anymore. And that was a pivotal point for me, because in the past, every time my mind said, hey, you know what, screw it, let's go.
Right.
Let's go drink.
You were already off to the races.
Yeah, there was no stopping me.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to tell anybody.
They say that 1,000-pound phone.
Yes, yeah. And I wasn't going to tell anybody because you might talk me out of it. My mind is made up. And so I haven't thought about drinking since then, right? That's the only time that I thought that drinking might be a solution, and it wasn't, you know, and I was grateful that I had the courage to reach out to my sponsor. And so I just threw myself into the AA program, car hopping at Sonic, and Oxford House, you know.
Right.
I'd never heard of sober living before, and all the times I'd been in and out of the rooms, I never knew that anything like Oxford House existed.
Right.
And so I was very grateful that I was able to create a family with these women and these men that lived in the Oxford houses in Wichita Falls, because everybody was done with me. They were done, you know. And,
Right.
And it was funny after I got out of treatment. So I have to tell this story. So I convinced myself, right, because I would lose my shit on methamphetamines, like families living in the attic, my husband sneaking women over the side fence panels into our bedroom door while I'm in the garage getting high. Like this, it was
That's
real
what's
to
going
me.
on.
It was real to me.
Right.
And so I remember one time in my active addiction, I tell my husband, I was like, look, I want 8-foot fence panels on each side of the house.
So you can't sneak women in?
But he didn't know that was why, right? And so we go to Home Depot and we're arguing over 6-foot or 8-foot fence panels. And he's like, Erica, it's going to cost more money. And, you know, just this back and forth. And like, I threw a fit over these 8-foot fence panels. And finally, when I got out of treatment, I was able to admit to him why.
You tell him
because
why.
in my mind, like, they ain't getting over these
That's
8-foot fence
funny.
panels. And so, you know, I'm so grateful today. My husband and I were separated. We just celebrated in May. We celebrated 15 years together. And,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I was a year sober when he was there when I picked up my year. We always stayed in contact with one another. He was always there for me. I remember I was broke. I had a toothache. I needed to get some antibiotics when I lived in Wichita Falls. And,
Right.
and I called him and I was like, hey, these antibiotics are going to cost $18. Can you send me some money? And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll send you Walmart to Walmart. And I just knew he was going to send me like $40, right? So I can go and get some Marble Lights. I can get some shampoo. I can go get me a cheeseburger. He sent me $20
Right.
for the $18 antibiotics that I needed. But I needed to experience that, right? Because I never wanted for anything as a stay-at-home mother. I didn't have to budget. I didn't have to, anything I wanted, I got. And I needed that humbling experience, right? I needed to know what it was like to go and have to eat from the food banks and get emergency food stamps and just barely make it, because it gave me that confidence that I needed. It
Right.
gave me that purpose. It gave me, you know, I just can't explain what it did to me as a woman who had always had other individuals taking care of her, to really truly be able to stand up and take care of herself. And I mean, the rest is history. Like,
Sure.
I'm 6 years sober now. The life that I get to live today, I could not have even imagined it would be anything like this when I first got sober. You know, my husband and I got back together. You know, me and my son, we have a great relationship today, it was a struggle. You know, I missed his 7th birthday or his 8th birthday. I was gone for an entire year of his life. And so it was a struggle when I first.
Yeah, it's got to take a while for a kid to forgive you for that, right?
Yeah. And it was always a struggle in the beginning whenever, you know, he would come and stay with me at the Oxford House, because I had to repair that relationship with him again. And it took a while. And my son was so funny. When we used to go to Walmart together and we'd be coming up on the alcohol aisle, he would yell out, Mom, don't look, it's the alcohol. And I'm just like screaming this in Walmart. Luckily, he's outgrown that. But,
Right.
you know, he got to experience what my active addiction was like, because there towards the end, I couldn't hide it from anyone. And so today, it's only fair that he gets to experience my recovery, you know. And so he's always so proud of me when he knows that I've come up on a year anniversary of being sober, and that means the world to me.
Right.
That means the absolute world to me, that, you know, my husband and my son are so supportive of me, considering all the damage.
Well,
that I caused.
for as many attempts as you had to try to burn it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. Hey, well, I want to get to Oxford, but before we do that, I want to talk about all the good stuff y'all are doing. But let's throw to our sponsor, which is the old lovely Max the Axe and thispinklawyer.com. Who was it that said
Chelsea.
Yeah, so Max, just if you're listening to this episode, she referred to you as the Pink Lawyer. But anyway, so they are Lone Star Injury Attorneys. He is actually out of Texas, but he also practices in California. So if you're in Texas or California, hit up thispinklawyer.com. It will take you to Lone Star Injury Attorneys, and he will get you maximum results. Right? And then we have our new sponsor, which
Stepping
is
Stone Sober Living.
There you go. You've already got it prepared.
Oh yeah, I did.
But we like to. This commercial was written by AI, and we like to have Chad read it in whichever character shows up.
I love it.
So this will be interesting. So Chadwick, please take it away.
Hold on, let me get a little sip of this Mio real quick. Okay. Are you or someone struggling with addiction and looking for a safe and supportive environment to begin this road to recovery? Stepping Stone Sober Living is the place to go. We know firsthand that the journey to sobriety can seem impossible, but you never have to do it alone. Man, that's as far as I can get with the French.
Okay.
Morgan Freeman for the rest of it.
Okay.
Our community provides the support and encouragement you need to stay on track and achieve your recovery goals. We offer clean, comfortable accommodations that will help you feel right at home. Plus, our location is conveniently close to historic downtown McKinney and several vibrant recovery groups, so you can easily access the support and resources you need to succeed.
Sweet, dude. That was thank you, Morgan. But that is Stepping Stone Sober Living. The number actually is 920-454-0569. Once again, that is 920-454-0569. It's a guy named Joe Lindsay that runs it, and he's a good dude.
Yeah, he is a very good dude. If you look at the screen, it looks like my head is the box.
You look like a blockhead.
Yeah, I look like a blockhead for
I
his
love
ad. There we go. Cool.
And then did you want to play? Did you have that queued up, like our new track or one of our new tracks? Or did you?
Don't be scared.
Do you want to play?
We're here for a debut.
I think I got it.
Well, actually, that was a debut in the intro song. That was a track that Chad and I just did like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
here's
so-
this one though. There you go.
Take two. Yeah, so that's our new track. That is out on the Beatport and actually streaming on all major platforms. It's called Something Beautiful by Kelly Reverb and Chad Lamont.
Gentlemen, don't be scared.
But anyway, so that's what we do on our when we're not actually doing a podcast and not actually working 45 hours a week like you, right? But yeah, so I wanted to talk to y'all. I was excited because I've had a lot of people on the show that actually are clients at Oxford House, but I've never had somebody that actually works for the organization and that can speak on. I just did a dusty.
Yeah, I did.
little mouth breathe.
Did y'all hear about the new? Did you guys hear about the new psychedelics in recovery?
It's okay. It's okay. But don't be scared. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, but yeah, so I want to talk about all the good things that Oxford House has, like as far as locations, what they accommodate, all the good stuff. So let's hear it.
Okay, so we're located in 5 countries. Here in this country, we have over 4,000 houses. Here in the state of Texas, we're sitting at 310.
Yeah.
310, 312
Okay.
over the state of Texas. Here specifically in the Metroplex, we're working with about 150 houses.
Wow.
That's also going to include Sherman, Denison, Tyler, Longview, Wichita Falls, and Waco. And
Okay.
then, of course, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all of that in between. FWD.
DFW. It is DFW for a
Fort
reason.
Worth, Dallas.
DFW.
Anyway, so, when I didn't know anything about Oxford House, right? And I could just remember thinking to myself, like, I don't want to live with a bunch of women. Like, I don't like women and women don't like me. And that's the mindset I came into recovery in this go around.
Right.
And it didn't take long for me to recognize that that's exactly what I needed. Right. And so what happened while I was in treatment, they took me over to the Oxford House in Wichita Falls, and I went through an interview process. And that interview process, it gives an opportunity for the women of the house or the men to ask you some questions, find out, a little bit about yourself, maybe a 30-minute interview. They take a vote on it on whether or not you're going to be accepted into the home. From there, you move into already a well-established house. When
Right.
I moved into my first Oxford house, I literally had like this one Betsy Johnson bag of clothing, which maybe had 4 outfits in it. My big book that the treatment center gave me, and then of course my stolen snacks.
Right.
And so that's all that I had when I moved into this Oxford house. They had everything. Everything was already set up where that was literally all I needed. And so you move into this Oxford house, or you move into an Oxford house and you don't have a job. Your full-time job is finding a job, right? And we're going to work with individuals. Like if you're sitting on the couch, eating popcorn, watching Netflix all day long, waiting for that job to knock on the door, we ain't got time for you. But
Right.
if you're really out there doing the deal, trying to help yourself, an Oxford house is going to be more than willing to work with you because we've all been there. I was able to move into my first house with nothing.
Right.
And then I was able to have that.
Well, one of the things that I love about Oxford houses is they actually do obviously kind of have like different situations for parents and children.
Yes.
And then there's also houses that are, obviously just guys and just females and
Correct.
and stuff like that. But yeah, why don't you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have the women's homes, we have men's homes, we have mommy and me's and daddy and me's.
Okay.
And so I actually, as an outreach worker, my first house that I opened up was a mommy and me house. And I was able to move into that home with my son there. And so typically with the parent and child homes, we usually have 1 or 2 parents that live there with their children, and then the rest are either going to be, single women or single men. And so we're very grateful that we're able to provide that, because why else would we get clean, right? Like, what's the point of recovery if we can't work on rebuilding those relationships
Right.
with our
Right.
family members?
Well, and that's another thing I say. It's just like, why get clean to be miserable? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And, and even if, your child doesn't live at an Oxford house with you full time, we want to make sure that our houses are always there and it's always conducive to being able to have those family members come over, whether they're your young children or your old children. We always want to create that family atmosphere.
Right. Got it.
I really think that one of the main things that sets Oxford House apart from other recovery homes is that we run democratically.
Yeah,
So-
I love that about it, and
Yeah.
but I also think that the whole democracy helps, maybe find the right house for you as well. You know what I mean?
Exactly. In fact, that's what we encourage people to do, is to interview at several houses.
Right.
Don't just do one,
Yeah.
because you're going to get a different vibe off of everybody.
Sure.
Right. And it took me 3 houses until I found the one that was right for me.
Okay.
actually
And I think that's
transferred.
important that you point that out. So
Yeah. It took me a little while, but once I found the home for me, that was it.
Right.
I was there for about a year.
Yeah.
So, I think that's definitely something that sets us apart. And another thing is that, we have our weekly EES, is what we call it, equal expense shared. It's basically your rent, but it's all included.
Right.
All bills are paid
Right.
with that weekly EES.
Sure.
We do also have a move-in fee. It's a one-time, non-refundable move-in fee that's also required of the residents and members.
Now is it so it's weekly that y'all pay?
Yes,
Okay, all right. And then also, okay, so and this is another important thing about the house, and it's self-governing, I know, but then there's also some built-in accountability as far as testing and all that goes. So why don't we get into that a little bit?
So with the built-in accountability, and I always like to share about this when I'm doing presentations, is that, I can go home and manipulate my husband. I can go home and manipulate my parents. I can't come into an Oxford house and manipulate addicts and alcoholics.
You can't have that extra.
You just absolutely
you can't have
cannot.
that extra side stash of pee.
Right.
And so
Right.
what we want to do with our houses is we want to, in order for them to really truly pay attention to each other's behaviors, they've got to get to know one another, right? Because a relapse is going to happen long before I pick up, long before I take that first drink. So we really want to encourage the members of our Oxford houses to pay attention to when those behaviors change, because you can catch that relapse long before it actually happens.
Well, and I think, another thing is people can probably actually catch that before you even realize it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not always going to see how I'm coming across. It's going to take my family to sit me down and be like, what are you doing?
Right.
And so we can intervene, right? We can have that intervention because we are peer run. We can set that individual down and be like, look, this is what we're noticing. This is where we see that you're heading. What can we do to help you to prevent that?
Yeah, and
Right.
you never know like what 2 words are going to be the words that you pull somebody aside and say that save their life, at least for that day.
Exactly.
And it can be something that simple.
It could be something like, don't be well, cool.
Everything's fine.
So I love it. I love what Oxford House does, and what they offer out there. And then what is the best way if somebody wants to is there like a database for Oxford houses that are in the area that people can look up, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's oxfordvacancies.com.
Okay.
You go in, you can put the area that you're looking to move into. You
Is
can
like
hit
zip
the show
code or
map
whatever?
feature.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to show you a map of the Metroplex. It's going to
Okay.
show you a map of Texas. Say you're in treatment here in Texas, but you want to go to Louisiana. It's going to show you all the houses in Louisiana.
Okay.
And so that's going to be the best place. On there, it's going to have your contact phone number for the house. It's going to specify whether it's what gender it is, whether or not it's a parent and child home or not. And then it's going to have that contact phone number. And
Right.
you call and you set up your interview and you go from there.
Okay.
And I do
It's
want
that
to
simple.
I do want to say too, we don't want money to be a barrier, right? So when
Absolutely
people
not.
are talking and doing these interviews and houses are asking about how much money they might be able to move in with, we do have programs in certain areas, and Dallas is one of them, and so does Fort Worth, where we have what we call a reentry program, where it's a more detailed application than a normal house application. But they can submit that application to our reentry committee.
Okay.
And then they will vote on they will see if they can get funding
Sure.
to be able to move into a house.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
That's great.
So we
That's a great
definitely want to make
option,
sure people
especially, yeah.
understand, that just talk to the house.
Well,
be open.
she was coming in with a bag of Cheez-Its
Right.
stolen
Stolen
from
snacks.
yeah, stolen snacks. So I get it.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
Sometimes not everybody always has the first week's rent already
Right.
put aside.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Well, anything else y'all want to shout out? Like anything coming up with the Oxford House program or anything like that?
You've got what events do we got going on in Dallas?
We have a
upcoming.
pool party coming up.
Got
A
our
pool
pool
party
party?
at
Sweet.
a house. We
Okay.
have the Oxford House. We're going to have our first ever prom.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's going to be in recovery month. It'll be the last Saturday of the month.
Yep.
So that's going to be open to anybody that's in recovery. So
Okay.
be on the lookout for that. But yeah, lots of
And
good
they
things
can just
coming
go.
up.
What's the website where they can find out about events and stuff like that?
So we typically have Facebook groups
Oh,
that
okay.
our membership can join once they become a member of an Oxford House. But
Okay.
we do have 2. We've got the Dallas area Facebook group, and then we have the Fort Worth Interchapter area Facebook group where we're always posting those
And
flyers.
it gets a little more detailed on
Yes.
there, and you can
Yes.
check out events and stuff like that. Well, it's cool, man, and I'm glad that y'all actually, had the chance to come in, and I'm
too.
glad we figured out everything technically, Chadwick.
Technical
Thank
difficulties.
job, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
It's okay. I understand. I am a technical master. Literally,
You did a meowing.
it was amazing.
But
y'all.
yeah, anybody want to you want to shout out before we let y'all go?
I mean, obviously, I got to shout out my husband for
Uh-huh.
putting up with my shit for
There we go.
15 years, and my son. I've got, and he's just like me, but I am just so grateful. He's funny, he's smart, he's intelligent, he's sarcastic, just like me, and
Right.
I'm so grateful for both of them.
Cool.
And for me, it would be my mom.
Okay.
Absolutely. She
Love
stood
it.
by me through everything.
Cool.
And thank y'all so much for having us.
Yes.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you for coming on, and thank you for making time for us. I know it's been a while in the making, but I'm glad it actually got to happen.
It was an
Yes.
honor. Thank y'all for having us.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to shout out my Chad. And so
adorable.
insincere.
I appreciate you so much because without the Kelly Weaver, the Jelly Mons will be nothing.
Bromance.
Anyway, but yeah, thanks for coming in. Next week, I'm excited. We actually have Mama Lou Castillo, coming on the show. She makes. She does smoked meats, and she does all kinds of tamales and stuff. You're like, I've heard of her. Well, she's right there. Look. Oh, my God. But she's going to be on next week, and she's here a week early to wait in our lobby.
Okay.
You
When
like
every
that?
time Kelly says next week,
Yeah.
it means 5 minutes from now.
Yeah,
And
but
then we
it
post
doesn't
it 1
air.
week at a
Yeah,
time.
it airs like
So
yeah.
There's just a little behind the scenes for all the people listening out there. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. We're not filming it every week. We just film it once a month.
We put them in the can. Is what it's called.
They're just waiting in the basement.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, thank y'all for coming out. I
Thank y'all.
appreciate it. And once again, check out Oxford House. If somebody actually because actually when you were getting ready to come out, I was telling your mom about Oxford House. I was like, oh yeah, to have him, but I think he found something else in McKinney.
Yeah.
But whatever. But anyway, so
fucking throw some shade, dude. Why don't you, you dick?
Oh, that didn't end the way I thought it would.
exactly.
My name's TJ Kelly Deverb, and I'm just going to throw shade at Chad.
Anyway, yeah, it was getting too warm and fuzzy in here, dude. I had to talk some shit.
Back to reality.
But anyway, remember, kids, there is no magic pill for sobriety, because if there was, we would all take too many.